Meanwhile, the White House is on offense after that hearing. Charlie Gasparino has some breaking news on that and so much more. Hey, buddy.
How are you? It's not quite the White House, but it is Marc Kasowitz, Donald Trump's personal attorney. He initially sought to take a sort of softer approach to Comey. When you read the prepared remarks that were released Wednesday, they seemed to be, exonerating Donald Trump.
Right,
if you read them, he said that, Trump wasn't under investigation. He confirmed that it didn't seem like Trump was directly ordering him to stop the investigation, so there was no obstruction directly stated in those prepared remarks. But then the hearings came, and Comey did a 180 it was very, listen, that was a drubbing. He gave Donald Trump a drubbing yesterday. Went after him on a number of issues, called him a liar.
29 times called him a liar.
Yeah, called him a liar, said he was slandered by him, and then he laid out in pretty meticulous detail the meetings they had, where he basically said, listen, I believe that, he didn't say this directly, but he laid out the case for an obstruction case. He basically said, it's up to you, Mueller. Listen, I know Comey. If he were a prosecutor, he'd bring an obstruction case on those charges, just based on what he did with white-collar attorneys. So what Kasowitz is doing now is a 180. He's now on the offensive. We know that he is going to file some complaint. That's what people close to him are telling the Fox Business Network, with the Senate Judiciary Committee and with the DOJ's Office of Inspector General against Comey next week for sort of leaking this thing out. And also
his memo.
His memos, right. Remember he said he gave it to a professor who gave it to the Times. Here's the interesting thing, and what we have exclusively here at Fox Business, that we know that Kasowitz has been investigating this, and this hasn't been out there yet, since March, investigating whether Comey or his subordinates have been leaking certain pieces of information to New York Times reporters and these sort of legal bloggers who are out there talking about it. He's been they've been going through, searching this stuff out since March. So
Kasowitz is not convinced this was like a one-off, a one and done with it, that there's
and he's gone back as far as March, from what we understand.
Okay.
And here's the other thing, Neil, that I think is interesting. We have this on foxbusiness.com. It's going to be a story on this. I think Kasowitz really wants to, he wants charges against Comey. There's no doubt. But if you talk to legal experts, Comey was there's no case here. Just as there may be no case against Donald Trump for obstruction, given how he presented his feelings to Comey. Could you just, can you see yourself not bringing charges? What legal experts are saying to us, Stanley Arkin, longtime white-collar defense attorney, John Coffey over at Columbia University, there's no case for Kasowitz. So, this may be just a public relations ploy.
No case in terms of, let's say, a guy who writes a memo when he was FBI director, then leaks that memo out as a private citizen, and not only that, releasing a memo you did when you were director. Yeah, and that wasn't an official government memo. He's not releasing. Right. Now, what Kasowitz is going to argue is that any conversation you have with the president is confidential. It's got. And he types it on the government computer. That's the argument.
He's going to say that, but the courts.
But let me ask you real quickly about what you made of the whole Comey thing. What I thought of, Charlie, is that imagine if he had never been fired. And we know the views he harbors now, the president, that he thinks he's a liar, can't be trusted. He talked to other FBI officials. They apparently concurred. This is all from Comey. And if he were still conducting this investigation, looking into so-called collusion and all, knowing that bias going in, knowing how he felt about the president going in, what the heck, what kind of investigation would it have been?
Well, with him there, he would suggested that, listen, I'm going to make sure this is done on the straight and narrow.
But his bias is clear for the world to see.
Oh, yeah, I know. Well, that's the whole thing. And that gives some credence to Donald Trump firing him. Listen.
And to John McCain's comment that there was a double standard.
Listen, I'm going to say this. I've been in the position as a reporter where I've been called into my boss's office. I'm not going to say who and what. And been told not to do a story because the person you're doing it about is a friend of a friend, or there's an advertising relationship. I'm not going to say where this happened. And I looked at that person in the eye and say, are you sure you want to be having this GD conversation with me? Okay, why couldn't Comey just say to Donald Trump, hey, listen, he had the presence of mind of typing this crap out afterwards. Yeah. Why couldn't he look him right in the eye and say, you sure you want to have this conversation with me, Mr. President?
He seemed to intimate he was intimidated, which is odd because he's like 48 feet tall.
It's like, I don't believe it. I believe that he wanted his job. He wanted his cake and eat it too. He wanted his job. He had this as ransom on Trump. And, you know, if Trump was going to screw with him, he was going to screw back. The whole thing is with Donald, it just shows you
President of the United States.
President of the United States, he's so naive. I mean, he just has no clue.
Well, that's kind of the way Republicans have been framing it, that he's new to this environment, that doesn't look right, that it might work, you know, the Chris Christie line, it might work in New Yorkese, but it's not.
I think it's more than that. I just think it's sort of like there's a blind spot here. I mean, this is just not what you do. You know, you don't call the guy in and do this. I mean, especially someone like him. I mean, you know, Comey writes down everything. I mean, you know, he's just, this guy is a.
Yeah, well, you would not have done that. Of course, I remember your expose on Mother Teresa, and it was awful. It was just awful.
It was, I didn't pull one punch on him.
Not one punch at all. So he's overrated. All right, Charlie Gasparino, thank you very, very much.